Hello, everybody, and welcome to a fireside chat with Global Top Round and Lunar Owl here. My name is Pontus Mahler. You might have seen me before, you might not have. The purpose of this fireside chat is that there is a lot of topics right now in the indie game industry. There's a lot about publishing versus self-publishing, how to get investment, and pretty much 20, 30, 40, 50 topics that Colin and myself can cover. So in this first little fireside chat here, we want to cover three topics in particular. The first one is, publishing versus self-publishing. What are the pros and the cons? And then the second one is, how do you actually raise money for your prototype or your vertical slice or the full game as a whole? And finally, what actually defines a AAA, AA, and AAA? Is this even something that exists? Should you care about it? And over time, the more fireside chats we have, we might have other topics to come in. And the purpose of this is to educate as many developers as possible. So, joining me today is Colin. So, Colin, who are you? What do you do? Please let everybody know.
Yeah, hey guys. Hey Pontus. Happy to be here. So I am coming at you from a company called Lunar Owl Consulting. I'm a partner and the business development manager at Lunar Owl Consulting. What we do is essentially we help independent developers on the business side in the easiest, most basic form. For the most part, a lot of these independent developers are very creative or are focused on the creative side, and they don't put any focus or attention on the business side. How they form their company, what their valuation is, have they done the financials for their projected game? Have they done market comparables for the game that they're shipping to market? And there's a lot that goes into that, which is just not, it's not focused on and it's not put much attention to, if at all. So what we do is we kind of shed light on the business side. And there's multiple reasons why we do that. One, if you're looking for a publisher, you need to provide that kind of information. They're looking for that. Two, if you're looking at investors, well, now you really do need to know kind of what your company is worth, where your company is going, what the vision of your company is, right? A lot of these developers, if you ask them what their vision is, they can't really give you a solid answer, or it's not very unique, right? We're just a bunch of guys that got together, that wrote in a napkin, and now we're making a game together, right? And that's not really a vision. It's not a vision that sells, right? You can't sell that vision. So essentially, Lunar Owl Consulting just, we help shed light on the business side, and then we bring that up to a really high quality so that when you are looking for money, when you are looking for that publisher, that investor, or you're looking for project financing, you're buttoned up and you look professional and you look like a company worth investing in, right? You're attractive, you're enticing, people want to get in on you. A lot of what we do is a lot of what Pontus does at GTR as well, but I'll let him introduce that if you haven't met him yet or heard from him yet. But we come from the gaming side. I come from the gaming side. I'm a very passionate person, very passionate about video games. I've been playing a lot of 2 Point Hospital by 2 Point Studios over this weekend, and it's a lovely management simulation game published by Sega. If anyone wants a new game to dive into. But I'm a gamer first and foremost, and I'm very passionate about it, and I come from there. And my second passion is people and working with people, and that's kind of why I fall into this role today of helping independent developers help get their games to market, help them get where they want. Lunar Owl's real vision is to help independent developers get to their vision, their long-term goals, right? So we try to help them stepping stones get there. And I think we've had some success doing that so far, and I loved every second of it. And Pontus, you know how hard it can be in this business, in our roles. You put a lot of work into stuff, and there's a lot of work that goes into it that's kind of underappreciated or under the, most people wouldn't know or never find out what you've done because it's not advertised. No one ever talks about it. A lot of the agents, business development, consultants, advisors, they're never mentioned ever, but they put a lot of work in, and they're never really appreciated for it.
And I also would say, right, that the biggest problem about our jobs is that we can't talk about the deals that we make. For example, once I dig into my intro, we have so many cool deals that we want to blast everywhere, but NDAs, launch dates, I'm sure you guys got a couple deals as well where you're like 2 years away, 3 years away before you can say anything.
I think one of our clients was announced by the publisher. It's announced now. It's by Koch Media, but it was announced at E3, so we can talk about it publicly now. We could make a case study for it. However, you're right. There's a deal we signed 2.5 years ago, and I still don't think we're going to be able to announce it for another year. So it takes a long time. You can't talk about it. You can't advertise yourself. You can say, hey, look, I did this deal, but they're like, well, where is it? Show us. Well, we can't talk about it. It's confidential. We'll get in trouble if we talk about it, right? And the thing is, we don't want to talk about it because we don't know who you're going to tell. And we don't know if it's going to reach the wrong ears.
Exactly.
Or the right ears, so to speak. So we can't do that. Anyways, just to sum it all up, again, Lunar Owl Consulting is a firm very passionate about games and developers and just trying to help out on the business side so that you can reach your goals, your vision, make you attractive to the outside world, because you really need that if you're looking for external partners. You need to look attractive. So that's kind of how we do it. We professionalize the business process for you. And I know that's a lot of what GTR does.
Since this is our first, fireside chat, and from what I've seen at least, Colin, you don't do a lot of speaker sessions, or you guys don't do a lot of like juries duty or anything. I think, like, at least for myself, I'm kind of out there, I'm in a lot of sessions, a lot of events, so people might have heard about me more, right? So I think we should probably ask you as well, like, why did you get into gaming, you yourself, not just Lunar Owl? And also, what is Lunar Owl looking for? So anybody watching this might be like, oh, Lunar Owl might be for me. Could be a potential, client for you.
Sure. So, yeah, you're right. We don't do much marketing. Everything is word of mouth. Everything is through our network. We don't do marketing. We want to do marketing. We know marketing is important. Like, the way you advertise yourself is something that I want to get more into. And I think we're waiting for that opportunity, but I don't think we should be waiting. We should just be diving in. So we've been having marketing discussions of how we get our brand more out there. So why am I here? Why am I doing this? Again, Howard, so just so everyone knows, my co-partner and the CEO of Lunar Owl Consulting is actually my father. His name's Howard. He gave me my first console when I was 3 years old, right? He gave me, the NES. I was 3 years old. And I started playing, and I was just, I would play as long as my parents would let me play for. And I'd play every game, and I'd just get lost in these worlds, and I would just be so happy in these virtual worlds. It's just so very happy. And that goes all the way up until today. When I'm playing games, it's just so blissful. It's so peaceful. It's just so fun. And the joy I get out of it, I don't find I get in many other aspects of my life, right? The joy comes from two things. It comes from interacting with people that I get along with, and that blow my mind with their insights and their intellect. And then the second part of it is the video games. I get lost in these worlds, and I love them. I just can't get enough of them. And the joy I had when I was 3 years old is still the joy I get today, right? It's not as imaginary. Like, I don't get lost, because when you're a kid, you have this crazy imagination. They're not as vivid as imaginations, but the joy and the bliss and the happiness is still there. I went to a school called BCIT in Vancouver, and I was in finance, right? But then when I left BCIT, the first thing I took a couple jobs outside the video game industry, and I just wasn't happy. And I kept trying to figure out why I wasn't happy. Like, why am I not, what's going on here? And then it kind of clicked with me. It's like, well, I should be in the video game industry. So I took a couple gigs inside development studios, and then I was happy, right? It was just night and day. I was happy. I wasn't even happy with what I was doing necessarily with my first couple of jobs, but I was happy knowing I was in the video game industry. And the good thing is I was on the business side and I was doing well, and people seemed to really think I was doing really well in what the position I was in, talking to other people, doing partnerships with external studios, and just generating revenue out of that. So I clicked there. So I clicked with a business role, and I clicked with video games. And then after that, I went to an agency. And that was an eye-opening experience, that agency. So it was a video game agency, and it was the same thing I do at Lunar Owl. Essentially, it was more of a siloed role. It was really just talking to developers and trying to get them, external partners to get their games to market. My role now is much bigger, and I do a lot more now. That was my first experience kind of being like someone who's really connecting developers with external partners. And I would say it was a learning experience. It was a year's learning experience, and I was also not. There was other things in my life going on that wouldn't allow me to excel in that role to the point in which I'm excelling at it today. But so I had to leave that job and figure out a couple of personal things on my end. But then when I figured out the personal things, and I moved over to Lunar Owl, and I was doing this role. That's when I really started being able to shine. Right, I really started forging really, really close relationships. I started, just excelling at being able to get this from day one, working with the developer to the day that the contract gets signed, the money's in the developer's bank, starting to really understand that process and being good at that process. Now, there's a lot of things outside of our control that, because as an agency, we're really an intermediary, we're middlemen. A lot of things outside of your control that you have to let go of because you don't have control. You can influence, you can help speed up the process, you can talk to people, reassure people, but you can't help them make the decision. You're not the final decision maker, right? So there's a lot of things outside of our control that we need to let go of. So if something goes wrong or something doesn't work out, it's usually we can't do anything about it. But that's the process I love. I love from the day we start working with the developer to the day they get that first deal that makes them so happy. They're so blissful. They know that their future is secured, at least for the first project. That process I really enjoy. I love it. And it's a very, and a lot of people don't understand this, it's a very complex process with a lot of moving parts. And you need, and to fully understand and appreciate that, you need to, go through it. And then you need to start learning each different cycle of it, each different portion of it, and try and get better at each of those portions. And then the whole process you'll get better at. Because it's a very complex process.
Funny you mention it, because I had a speaker event yesterday at Game Pawns. Yeah. People really underestimate the amount of time it comes into actually making a deal. All the things surrounding it, like all the details you need to prepare, the milestones, building up the whole production plan, all the details you need for the contract and so forth. And then all the little tiny nitty bits in the contract itself that may or may not prove really bad for the developer in the long term or really bad for the publisher in some terms, right? And they really don't understand the importance of having a business partner. So in my speaker session yesterday, what I talked about was find someone, whether it's Lunar Owl, Global Top Round, an advisor, or an expert in the industry, so forth. You always need somebody by your side, no matter how much experience you have as a developer. It really is there, because there are other people out there with different experiences than you that can give you a different perspective. And that's what people really misunderestimate. So they really should just start. And I think the other thing is that it's so easy to do due diligence in this industry. So if you're uncertain about a certain advisor or a potential business partner, go out and talk to people, right? Talk to 20, 30 different people, or even 5 to 10, and find out whether or not this person is trustworthy. And then get him or her on board. And a lot of indies always say, oh, we don't have the money for it, we don't have this, but in reality is that a lot of the advisors would take advisory shares on performance, even maybe something up front, and then over time they get more, right? So if you don't have money, then reward them in shares. There are so many different scenarios where you need someone with experience, and I think that studios miss out on that.
To summarize the last question you asked, essentially it's just I'm very passionate about video games, and I've been a gamer for the last, almost 30 years, 28 years. And the fact that I just love working with people, and really the succession of me getting to where I am today is just the fact that I've bonded with people. I love business. I love the process of getting a deal signed or signing on a partner. And then because to me a game that doesn't get to market is a sad day. And I know for a fact, Pontus, someone like you in GTR and someone like us and Lunar Owl, we have probably got games signed that would never make it to the market otherwise. So I know we do provide value. It's a sad day when a game developer with a promising project isn't able to make the game. It's never made and it's lost. It's never going to be. No one's ever going to know about it. And it could have changed the industry, right? There's probably a game out there that could have changed the industry. It never got signed, and it never got the money. And it's in some dusty old data file somewhere on someone's computer. But just to summarize, that's how I got into it. Now, how do you work with Lunar Owl? How do you? So the thing is, what we've learned is Lunar Owl is looking for long-term partnerships. We don't want to do one-offs. We don't want to come in and just we're not. The reality is, we care more about the people we work with than the end result. Meaning, the money behind it or the prestige that would come behind it if it's some talented developer. We want to get to know you first. So, I think the first couple conversations are casual, getting to know each other, right? If you reach out, if it's through you, Pontus, if someone we know and we really like introduces us to someone, it's probably a quicker process. But because we care more about the relationship than people we work with, it takes some time before we'd probably be comfortable taking on that client. Knowing that when we get together, there is true value add and that we're going to go on this long adventure together. And if something happens along the way and it doesn't make sense for us to no longer work together, that's fine. We'll part ways. Maybe we'll work together in the future, especially if we really like the relationship. But if it didn't make sense there, or if we end up not liking each other, it's fine. We just are, in our agreements, it says that's fine. Let's just move on. We don't have to work together. But I think it's a couple conversations, a couple casual conversations. We get to know each other, right? And it's a process. I now have a defined process of, does it make sense for us to work with you? Does it make sense for you to work with us, right? Are we going to be a value add for you? Are we truly bringing value to your organization? And that's what I want to get down to first. I don't just want to jump in and say, yeah, of course we can. Of course we'll represent you in your games. It's really, and then I want to say, hey, look, here's the value I think we can provide on our end to your organization, right? And if I can really see us coming in and really helping your organization and being a value add, and we're fun, like we're adding that fun component on top of it, like you really enjoy working with each other, and we provide the results. Let's work together, right? But I'm finding that's not always the case, right? There might be a project they want us to represent, but I find there's not a personality fit, right? The way you guys work, the way we work, that's not a fit. And usually we adapt to our developers, but in some cases, it's not fun for us to adapt to the developers' needs and the way they work. And Howard and I do this because we enjoy doing it. So we're not just going to get into a relationship with any developer. It's got to be a developer we click with, and that's why we have this process, because I'd rather have this process than working with someone and then 5 months later just being like, wow, we should have known this from the beginning, right? That's the feeling I don't like. We should have known this from the beginning. Why didn't we know this? And that's because we didn't have a process and we never really got to know each other in the beginning. So I know I've been going on about this answer, but I think the first thing is just reach out. Let's have a couple conversations. I'm a very social person, and I'll be the one that keeps that social line going. I'll call you, I'll email you, I'll message you back and forth on Skype, and we just get to know each other. And if for whatever reason there you have a real need and there's a timeline behind it, maybe we have we work together for 3 months quickly, just see if we like each other. If not, we can go separate ways. But I don't find that's ever the case. I find that everyone enjoys the getting to know each other process first.
All right. Alrighty, so that's Lunar Owl, guys, to get things started. So I guess I'll start digging into what I do. So basically, yeah, I said earlier, my name is Pontus Mahler, but in a lot of events, I also include my gamer tag. The reason for that is I actually used to be, I started off as a game designer, so just like Colin, growing up, I think my first game was actually a reality shows game, because there is a Swedish show called Fångarna på fortet, which is like a reality show where celebrities get to like a castle in the middle of the ocean, and they need to do a bunch of crazy stuff, like be with spiders and snakes and stuff, and they need to get through all these different fears. And I think I have a vague memory of sitting in my mom's lap and playing this game, but I could be wrong. Either way, disregarding the reality game, my first game was Age of Empires 1. And that stuff just got me hooked, which is why, the entirety, since I got started, it's always been strategy games for me, RTS, and, went from Age of Empires 1 to Rise of Nations, Empire Earth, and all of these really old school RTS games, eventually Age of Empires 2, Age of Mythology, and it's just always been, my kind of genre. So when I was around 12 or 13 or so, I started becoming a so-called super beta tester for an American company in Kalamazoo called S2 Games. And I helped out a lot with, feedback in the back end of the system, helping building new heroes and so forth. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I got picked up in a random public game by, for the people watching, if you played Dota 2, you might know Team Liquid. And in Team Liquid, there's multiple players, Insania, Mickey, and all these guys. They're actually my old teammates when I played professionally. So Insania is the guy who found me, and I'm the guy who found Mickey. So that's how like my career started. Started playing professionally. I think I was at the age of 14. Attended DreamHack, played a couple of tournaments. Ended up becoming one of the best teams in the world later on with Sync Esports. So I founded my first company when I was 17. So became the CEO of Sync Esports, which was an esport organization, of course. During this time as well, I consulted brands such as Nvidia, and ultimately I ended up moving to Thailand when I was 22 years old, in which I became the CEO of Neolution Esports, and I had about 87 employees, athletes, influencers, but in the esport industry basically, and also created a lot of merchandise and gaming gear and things like that. And during this entire period, I was consulting multiple clients such as Singtel, AIS here in Thailand, working on esports strategy and gaming strategy, until, sometimes crazy things happen and you meet people in random spots, like, Colin and I met randomly. I met the GTR guys in Japan at a party, actually, for a company called AppsFlyer. So I was at this party, and my colleague was like, you should meet these Korean guys, which is Danny Wu and Rick Nam, the founder and co-founder of Global Top Round. And we just clicked right away, and I fell in love with the idea of what Global Top Round does, what we stand for in the industry, and Colin already said multiple things that we also stand for. But as a whole, Global Top Round was founded on the foundation of giving power back to the developers. That's something, the developers never really understand their real value. They don't understand when they have IP, and they don't understand that if a publisher is giving you a term sheet, it means they want to sign your game. It means that there is leverage. It means that you can actually negotiate. It doesn't mean that this is a take the current terms or go away. And I think that's almost every time what developers think, like, that's how it is. On top of that, developers don't always know what they are allowed to ask for. There seems to be this kind of stigma in the industry where you can only ask for a certain number, or this happens, or you lose the potential deal, or if you ask for this term, then the deal's over, or oh, you want to involve lawyers, oh, okay, now we're not going to work with you anymore. The fact of the matter is that any good lawyer, any good VC will always want you to have legal counsel. Both sides should always have legal counsel. It's normal, it's standard, it's how it should be. So anyway, we got founded 6 years ago. We started off with Global Top Round. Now we have over 50 investments in 28 countries, I believe, and we're going to keep growing by 10 every single year. So every year we invest minority shares in 10 indie developers, and then we do exactly what Colin does. Our goal is to make your vision a reality. We try to shape it for you, we try to build it with you, but ultimately, just like with Colin, neither of us have the final decision. It's always the developer that makes the final choice. Sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worst. But, ultimately, it's the developer's choice. And I think that's what's really key here. So yeah, just to kind of wrap up Global Top Round without going into too much details, 10 investments per year. Our goal after you've gotten our investment is that we take care of literally everything. So from pitching you to publishers to investors, helping you with evaluation of the company, building all the documents for you, such as milestone, production planning, the actual valuation documents, the whole burn rate, all of this, we have templates that we build that you can fill in, and we'll help work with you on these. So ultimately, when we go to a publisher, when we go to a VC, you'll have all the due diligence documents that you need. And on top of that, we'll be there by your side negotiating the whole thing. So, we'll build the terms, we'll actually make the whole contract for you, we'll actually talk with the so-called enemy lawyer, if we're going to be funny here, but the opposite lawyer of the publisher or the VC, and we're going to negotiate until the finish line, until it's closed. And, I'm sure there are people watching this that probably wonders, what the but is here from both of our sides. So, we obviously can't share all the details, but for us, we buy minority shares, and then we have a revenue share on the first title. So the title that you sign with us, that's how we make money in the short term. And in the long term, just like Colin, we're trying to build long-term relationships. We're not interested in someone who wants to work with us for 6 months, wants us to be, oh, hey, Pontus, go sign me with this publisher and say goodbye. Or, hey, raise this money for me and goodbye. That's not what we do. We get the minority shares to have a 5, 7, 10-year plan to always be there with you by your side. And then the rev share is for us to, continuously reinvest into new projects every single year. And, all of our terms are very transparent. The first time you speak to me, we're going to talk about this. You're going to know exactly what you're signing up for, exactly what we're going to help you with. And the coolest thing that I think has happened with Global Top Round is we have a Discord with all of our investments, meaning that you have access to every investment we've ever made. You can talk to them. You have a common lounge. You guys can ask each other for hires, for advice, do's and don'ts. And then 6 months into our program, you get to meet everybody again to talk about what you've learned. So we've built this little community portfolio of just having a lot of developers that we can kind of scale to the next step. I would say that the difference between Colin and ourselves is that we probably, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Colin, we get involved with studios that are slightly smaller than you. We find the developers that are a little bit more early stage, more fresh, while you work in a bit larger deals, right? If I'm not mistaken here.
I would say that's right. Well, the two big differences, you touched on the first one, is that you guys actually make equity investment first, which I think is great because that's a sign of approval. It's kind of like a validation before it goes on to further investment. So I think that's amazing that you guys do that. It's something Howard and I probably want to do. I don't know if we do it for every client, if that's a service we'd provide, but it's something we're talking about that. And I make personal small equity investments in startup studios as well. But I would love to see Lunar Owl actually make those investments too, because I think it's great for validation, seal of approval if an established organization makes that investment first and then helps them find the further investment, find the further partners. I think that's great what you guys do. And then second of all, I would say yes, we tend to work on projects, and we're going to get into this, that AA, AAA budgets or production values, which are larger, and that's because we're centralized in LA and Vancouver, where the teams that we're around and the people that are in these areas tend to have, they have a lot of talent and they want to make big games. So it's just a product, I think, of where we are in the world geographically.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mean, I think the reason Colin and I talk so much, and it's something that we want to change in the industry, is that there are so many different types of accelerators and mentors, and let's call them experts or whatever, and business developers. And the thing is, there is more than enough to share with everyone, and there is more than enough to learn from everybody, which is why Colin and I get along so well, because we have the same kind of mindset. We're all here to grow. Yeah, we're all here to grow, help the industry, and we do that by helping each other. That's really what it comes down to. So that's kind of what we want to do just as a general industry. If you look at almost all of our speaker sessions as GTR, for example, they're usually not about our company. It's about something that is education, something that we want to teach you guys about. I've done my last 5 speaker sessions, the last one excluded, were about pitch decks and investments, and there was a jury. Our goal is just to show you guys who we are as people rather than who the company is, because just like Colin said, personal relationships is key. The personality matching is key. And if you like me, the chances are you're going to like my company. And that's why we have that kind of approach as well. But yeah, so that's really GTR. So this year, in about 2 months or so, we're going to open our investments for this year. So if you're a developer, hit me up. I would love to take a look. Doesn't matter how early stage you are, as long as you have a playable. Now, self-promotion aside, I'll dig into the second company who's also, of course, helping us here with a bit of promotion, which is a Game Round. So last year, we started our second business called Game Round, or G Round, so gameround.co, which is basically what we found, and I'll try to keep the promotion small. We found a loophole in the market, which is the PC and console market has no pre-validator. In mobile gaming, you have App Annie, you have Facebook ads, you have all these different kind of tools to do KPIs, RAS, and all of this. But in PC console, you have nothing. And you might have Reddit communities, you might have Twitter, but it's usually quite small. So in G-Round, you can get your your prototype, your MVP, or very late stage, get it tested, and get a lot of feedback from all across the world with people that are unbiased. People that aren't getting paid to tell you what they think about your game. They just want to help indie developers and other types of developers to make their games better. It's a super cool service, but I'll keep it short because, again, they're sponsoring this podcast or fireside chat, so I'm gonna mention them. But it's a really cool company, so hit us up. If you have a game, you're uncertain, you need some help, you need direction, you want to know more about the game, you can come to us. And it's a new company. We are in pre-alpha right now. We're going to be launching beta very soon. So yeah, thank you G-Round for helping us out. And let's start digging into the first topic, I think, Colin, right? So we definitely went almost 30 minutes here talking about ourselves, but...
Well, I think the great thing is that there is a lot of I think we touched on topics too, right? Yeah. I think there are valuable nuggets within our 30-minute introduction. So, and it's just because it's the first episode. The next one we'll be diving into the topics right away, so...
Exactly. So I think I'm kind of going to flip the topics here because, again, we did have some nuggets in our introduction. So how about we get started first about what is the actual definition of your game and your company? So what actually defines an indie versus AAA, AA, and AAA? So I'm going to hand it over to you first, and then we'll take it from there.
So let's start with A, AA, and AAA. I think the first thing and the easiest thing that defines these different tiers is the budget of the game, right? So AAA really just means a lot of money is being put into the game, right? Between 50 to, let's just say $500 million, but actually plus now, probably closer to $1 billion. There are probably a couple games in production right now that might even hit over the $1 billion mark by the time it's actually done. And so here's the thing, though. It's very easy I don't think anyone is going to disagree that GTA 5 is a AAA game, right?
Yeah.
No one. No one's going to tell you it's a AA game. No one's going to tell you it's an A game, right? Now, I'll explain why I'm saying this after we talk about AA and A. AA is just a lesser production value in terms of the fact that it's going to be in that, I don't know, that maybe 3 to or 5 to 30, 40, $50 million range. It's a little subjective, those brackets. But that's more of the range, where it's more 3 to 5 to 30 to 40, $50 million. That's the AA range. And then single A is, you could argue it's $1 million to $10 million, right? Now it's subjective in the sense that, like, you could say GTA 5 is a AAA game, but then there's a lot of debate about some smaller games, whether they're AAA or AA or single A. And to be honest, I don't hear single A thrown around a lot. Yeah. It's AA or AAA.
I think AAA has kind of taken over that A so-called distinction nowadays. AAA I think became a saying like in the last year or two.
Yeah, I wanted to start with AA, AAA because I think there's more of a profile there. It's easier to distinct that. But when you get to single I, double I, triple I, now it's just super subjective, right?
Yeah.
And it's completely in the perspective of the person talking.
Yeah.
I think the difference between A, AA, triple A is you could say possibly that a talented, experienced team is working on that caliber of game. But when you get to the I, double I, triple I, that's super indie. That might be teams that have no experience in the industry.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I feel about it. But again, it's just so subjective. I bet you people have wildly different answers about it.
But I think it's kind of like a good way to get started because, again, like the reason we're talking about this, guys, is because I think both Colin and I have seen this in pitches recently. People toss in the terms everywhere, also in speaker sessions and everywhere. They're about AAA and AA and AAA. And for us, it's honestly quite stupid. I think I speak for us both here because I do believe that putting a production budget or production value on it is the best way to make it a distinction. Because if we were to say it this way, right? If a developer with no experience whatsoever works on a game with $50 million budget, and let's say that he or she works in this game for 4 years, I would say that that's an ex-AAA employee, right? Because they worked on a AAA budget. It's not just about, who you're working for, whether it's Ubisoft or Blizzard, because, there are a lot of projects that Ubisoft and Blizzard does that aren't in the $50 million range, right? And also, I would say that generally in the AA versus AAA, so actually we have a AA game in my opinion. So we have a game called Stray Blade, right? Which, if you look at it, is incredible for, an initially so-called indie game. It was a 5-people team in Germany. They're now 23, by the way. We signed them to a AAA publisher, which we're so excited about. But the point here is that if I was to put this game next to Sekiro is quite clearly a AAA game, right? You have all this amazing combat, you have the cinematics, you have all the art, you have all the extra story. Now, if I was to put Stray Blade next to Sekiro, I would say that the mechanics and the combat there is equal. I would say it's as good as Sekiro. I would want to throw that out. But we don't have the cinematics. We don't have that art extra kind of flair to quantify it as a AAA. And budget-wise, I wouldn't even call it AA, right? So how do we actually quantify it for a watcher here?
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I've looked at Stray Blade, and I think that's quite impressive for a 5-person team to have developed what Stray Blade is today. But I don't know all the economics and logistics of that team.
Yeah.
However, I would say that the game could be argued that it's a AA game or a AAA game. It can be argued, and I bet you people with different backgrounds, perspectives, would say it's either one or the other. So, again, very subjective. I'm trying to think outside of the budget. Here's the thing, and I'll touch on this. And this is more of like giving helping you developers out there. I would not put the fact that you're a AA or AAA team or III team in your deck. You're going to have to talk about the team and the leadership roles within the team within your deck or your bios, and you can talk about what studios they've worked with and what games they've produced there. You don't have to say you're a AAA team, AA team. The thing is, there's so many developers out there with that within their pitch decks, and they're talking about it. So now you're just sounding like every other developer, and it's not going to be very compelling for the people who might want to invest in you. So I would stay away from saying you're a AA, AAA team, because you're just going to be shoehorned into every other developer that says that and does that and puts that within their materials. So I would just stay away from it because it's not a unique selling point. It's not compelling.
No, I think actually that's the conclusion we're both going to come to. The reason we're bringing up this topic even is because, like we said in the beginning, it's kind of stupid. I mean, it really doesn't make sense. And in the end, like, to be honest, nobody actually cares, when it comes down to the pitching. And that's, like, I think the conclusion of this is you don't need to put it in the deck. You don't need to talk about it. The thing is that everybody will subjectively rate it later on. Like Colin said, if I look at Stray Blade's total budget, which will be public, I believe, somewhere next year, it's not going to be, a AA by budget. But in terms of quality, again, putting it next to Sekiro, I think we're there. But again, that's my subjective opinion. And if I was to go out to a VC now and raise money for Stray Blade, I wouldn't put in we're making a AA game in there. Why would I ever do that? And I wouldn't sit in and talk about all these different terms. So I think we both agree that the term in general is just overused. It's not necessary. And ultimately, you don't need it in your pitch.
It's overused. It's thrown around a lot. Ultimately, it's subjective. And ultimately, you don't need to worry too much about it because it's not going to sell your game or your team. You're not going to sign a deal because you put that in your deck and you talked about it. So
yeah, I do believe there is one little crisp detail though, which has happened a lot. Like when so we work with publishers, so does Colin, right? And sometimes when we meet new publishers, they actually say that we're looking for AA games. So now it's flipped on the other side, right? I talked about how you guys don't need to do it, but sometimes you might get a reply from a publisher saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're only looking for AA." Now, what does that really mean? And from my experience, honestly, had it's just been by the visuals and the production value of how your game looks like. It's never been about budget or about your team. It's always been, how does the project actually look from an outside perspective? So in a couple of times, like we've had publishers come and look at our portfolio and they've looked at games like, let's say Stray Blade, and that to them is a AA, when I've talked to them. But then if we look at some of our other games, like for example, Zombie Soup from our Malaysian investment, that has been looked at as a AAA. But the point here is that if they say that they're looking for AA and you're not a good fit, all that they're saying really is that the game doesn't look like it has enough of a production value to fit their portfolio. It has nothing to do with your background of your team. It's all about the looks of the game and the aesthetics and maybe even the feel of it. Because you could say that the difference between, let's say, a AA and a AA is that the mechanics are much smoother, the gameplay is flowing better, the cinematics make perfect sense, or the writing of the game feels better. I would say that kind of qualifies for an upgrade, right, Colin?
Yeah, absolutely. I would absolutely say that. What you've reminded me is that, and I think Team Ninja with Hellblade did this, They have a AA budget, but the look and the feel of the game is AAA, right?
Yeah.
They're able to really stretch that dollar. And if you look at their interviews and the videos they've made documenting the production of that game, they literally say, we're going to take a AA budget, but make it look and feel like a AAA game. Very direct about it. And they did that. And that game was very successful. And I think you have a lot of teams out there now doing that. Yeah. But I think that you bring up a good point in which if someone is saying, like, the look of the game can look AA or it can look AAA, right?
Yes.
So when I look at Stray Blade, I would never say Stray Blade looks like a AAA game, right?
Yeah.
But if I look at Ninja Theory's game, right? Now, Stray Blade might be working on a AA budget too, right? And that's what Ninja Theory did. They worked on a AA budget. But the look of Stray Blade is AA. The look of Hellblade is AAA. And really, that is just the way it looks, right? It's just the production values put into it, the talent put into making those different aspects of the game really shine and look really good. That's really all it is. It's just how good does it look? How amazing? How detailed is the world? How are the visuals the best you've ever seen, right? Or are they close to the top? It's really just that's really what it is. It's when you look at the game. Because, and me and Pontus can go about this, but a lot of these publishers and the people investing in your game, they might not even be video game makers. They may not even understand fully the production of a game or the development of a game. They might never have been on the developer side. So when they look at your game and they look at your videos and stuff, they're really looking, hey, does this look like a really talented team is making it? Does this look like really cool, like you really want to be in this world? Is it really compelling? Can we sell it with marketing, right? Can marketing really sell these visuals and the way it looks in the world and plays in the world? So that's what that look is. Like, does it really look like a AAA team is making this game? Does it really look like this game can be sold through marketing? Like, are people really going to be really excited when they see this video?
Exactly. And actually, it's really good that we're using Stray Blade as an example because, again, we signed a AAA publisher to this team with no previous backgrounds, guys. They don't have any big launched projects, and yes, we signed it to a AA budget. And why? Because, like I mentioned, the mechanics, the gameplay flow, the combat is so-called AAA quality. I know we're throwing out this word now, even though we said it doesn't matter, but, we're trying to give you a perspective of where the word matters, right? We were able to convince a top-tier publisher because we had something in our game which is just top-notch. So even though we don't have enough, budget to make it super fancy or be like a AAA, that gets launched all the time, we were able to convince a huge partner because the flow is there, the combat's there, and it shows an amazing amount of talent. Which is why, again, I know I'm biased because we're invested in Stray Blade, but that game is going to be incredible. And you're going to be playing Sekiro, and in some ways, some really cool stuff is going to happen in the combat that is not in Sekiro. And that is something that I absolutely love. So even though when you play it, you might not have all the cinematics as a Sekiro game does, you're going to play it and love it like a so-called AAA game. Yeah. But anyway, we can keep talking about the whole labeling, but ultimately, again, guys, pitching it doesn't matter. If someone tells you to kind of recap that they're looking for AA games to you, it just means it needs to have a higher production value, and that can be done in many ways. It can be done visually, mechanics, gameplay. There's so many different things where you can up the scale. So don't take it when you read a comment from a publisher or a VC saying they're only looking for AA or AAA. That's fine, Just think about it as this: you need to improve your demo, your vertical slice, make it better to convince them you're at that quality within your game. Some games are beautiful. Some games are great to play. I mean, actually, Neo and Abyss, right? Neo and Abyss is a great example. They sold like 500,000 copies, but if you look at it, it's not like, a massive, huge game. It's actually like a fun, roguelike, like really, really good, well-made game on probably a very small budget. So it's possible, guys. Again, the sky's yours. Don't worry about these terms. What comes down is what is your playable like? Whether it's in prototype or MVP stage, how does it look like? How does it play like? What's the flow? And as long as you nail one thing out of all of these, everything else can be improved. So I think we should kind of jump into the next topic here, so what I'm saying makes sense when it comes to publishers. But I guess we should do the raising the prototype first. But so let's talk about raising the prototype. I think that's better to get started here. But my point here is that if you have a demo or a vertical slice that just really nails one aspect of the game so well, and you might have like a larger budget, if you can convince the publisher or the investor that you can make this happen, they might give you extra budget to actually make it more visually appealing, add extra cash on top of it. But yeah, we'll dig into that more later. So
yeah, the only thing I'll add commentary to that is that one thing you're focusing on, it should be a unique selling point, something that's different from other games. Like, because if you're just focusing on, like, typical Devil May Cry combat, right? It's the exact same. Like, there's not much to it. But there is a unique selling point, but you're not putting time and effort into that. You're actually shooting yourself in the foot, because when a publisher or investor says, well, this is just Devil May Cry, like, this is how, you have to remember, when they look at it from a business marketing standpoint. We can't just be out there saying this is Devil May Cry, right? We can't, because it's not going to entice, because we're all about novelty. Human beings are driven by novelty. It keeps us engaged. And on the publishing side, if they can't keep that novelty in people's brains going, they're not going to be able to sell their games. So if you have something that literally is there's not many games out there that have it, or it's a new twist, a new spin, or it's something new altogether, focus on that and drive that home, because that's going to go a lot further than you just honing in on something that every other game does. So I'd really advocate that you focus on that one thing that's really special about your game.
I think this will be one of our future episodes. I think we'll talk about USPs and pitch decks and stuff.
Yeah, we should totally do that. You should write that down for like next episode or something.
Writing it down now, Yeah, so let's get started on the prototype and how to actually make your first one. So I have so many opinions on this, so I'm gonna let you go first here. But okay, so I'm a studio and I'm about to make my first prototype. In your opinion, what do I do? And obviously, the most discussed topics here is that either you do this on the side with your main job, you build it with some people, you gather them around, or number two is you just gather up a bunch of savings, you put a team together, you guys build something, and then you go out and pitch it. These are, of course, I would say these are the less doable. Like, not a lot of people do it. Then we have the third one, which is raising money from friends and family, or angels. And then the fourth one is, just going right into pitching, whether it's with a publisher or an investor. You just go straight out and you pitch an empty game, like a GDD or a pitch deck, basically. So obviously, our watchers here might be from all different types of backgrounds. They could be indie, they could be medium, they could be large. So let's start with, indie. If you're an indie, no fancy backgrounds, no fancy resumes, what do they do in your opinion, Colin?
My answer might be the same across all these different types. I think the best thing for you to do is to make sure you put your own money into your first studio if you have that capital. And I'll get into it, but with your friends and family, if you have co-founders, they should be putting money into. Because later on, when we start talking about publishers and investors, they're going to want to see that you have skin in the game. If you don't put money in your own game, why would anyone else put money into it? Where's your commitment level? If you haven't put money into the game, a lot of these investors and publishers are going to think, well, how much does he really... unless you don't have that money and you're really passionate about it.
But that brings in another point, right? So if you don't have the money, but you're putting in the effort, in your opinion, does sweat equity count?
Sweat equity counts if your intention is that when you have money, you'll put it into your own company. You're going to reinvest it. Sweat equity does count. I don't want to put that... Look, if you've spent the last 2 years on a prototype and you put your blood, sweat, and tears in it, but you didn't have the money to put into it, that definitely counts. But you need that story needs to come out. People need to know that.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you don't tell people that, if they don't know that, they're going to assume you're not as committed as these other developers are that have put the money in. My advice would be put your money in first. Put your money where your mouth is, and go in with your friends and your family. And I say go in with your friends and your family first because it's going to be a lot more flexible. You're going to have a lot more freedom. You might not even need a contract to begin with, unless your family is, they're avid investors or they're sophisticated investors. They're probably going to give you the money without much of a negotiation process, without much of a due diligence process, because they're just going to be, what, we believe in you. It's awesome that you're trying your first thing out. We want you to succeed. Here's some money. And then, we wish you the best kind of thing. And then you can hopefully you have enough money to get your first prototype made, if not your first game. And that allows you to get experience with the process. It allows you to have some capital to work with. It shows your commitment levels. The thing is, publishers these days and investors, they expect a lot. They see so many investors. They see so many projects. You need to put something in front of them. It can't just be a piece of paper unless you're someone in the industry that has a top-notch background. We have tried to pitch two extremely talented guys before with just a piece of paper. And even though people will tell you, yeah, we fund pieces of paper, the reality is they don't. They don't do that. And unless you're Warren Spector or someone else who's really well known in the industry, you're not going to get that capital. Because there's too many developers out there that have something to show that's very polished, that it's the risk mitigation. It's all about risk mitigation. The reality is those projects are a lot less risky. Yours is super risky, right? Especially if you're a first-time developer. It's too risky for them to put their dollars to that project.
Yeah,
so
and I think
go ahead.
to just I think I don't need to add much, so it's kind of pointless to throw the question back to me after this. Rather, what I kind of want to reinforce as well is that we had one studio which I love to all my heart, which we're hopefully signing soon, which is Clover Creek Entertainment with the game Ascended Realms. I absolutely love that game, and they did exactly that. They didn't have any money to put in, but they put in their blood, sweat, and tears on the side of their side gigs, And I told them the first thing. Put in that sweat equity number into the pitch. Why? Because you guys didn't make any money for 1.5 years. You didn't have any capital to put into the company, but you kept working and the game kept improving, So there is an actual track record of each patch being better, each level being better, the AI getting better, Actually, it's one of my favorite stories because we did not invest, We saw the game in our conference and we saw a lot of flaws and we basically passed on them. But I knew that this game was such a genius game that I didn't want to, leave it there. So every 3 months I checked in with them, and every 3 months there was improvements. Always things. And, they didn't have money, so how the hell did they do that, right? Because they did their real jobs, and on the side they kept building it and they kept working on it. And that showed dedication. And then the gameplay showed itself. 6 months later, we invested into them. Then I did an angel round for them last year. And, now we're currently negotiating with publishers, right? That's a great example. They had no cash. And I'm sure there's a lot of indies that when you heard Colin just now, you're like, yeah, I don't have money. And then you listen to my story now. It's still doable, You just got to show improvements. You got to show that if you're not putting in money, but you're putting in your blood, sweat, and tears, the game has to show that too, It can't just be like, yeah, I worked on the 6 months extra and then, one level got added, right? It has to be something.
Let me just say this. Progress is sexy.
Yeah.
From the perspective of me, from the perspective of Pontus, from the perspective of published investors, progress is sexy. And I need to actually hear from a developer before I sign a game. I need to hear this game is getting to market no matter what. And I need to hear that because if it doesn't get to market, well, for one, just to be honest, there's a chance that, Lunar Owl works on contingency that we might never get paid for all the work we put in.
Yeah.
But two, there are developers out there that have project ideas. They make the prototype and then they give up on it because they shop it around. They can't get the funding for it. When the reality is, it's not that you can't get the funding. It just might be the fact that you can't get the funding right now as the prototype currently is. They get all this feedback. They're not iterating on the product. And to be honest, if I'm a publisher and investor and I know you've made this prototype, and you're only gonna make it until someone else puts funding in, I'm gonna pass on you, to be honest. If I see improvements and I see that you're gonna get this game to market no matter what, I know you're committed, and that's sexy. The commitment and the progress is sexy, and I'm in. And Howard and I have learned the hard way. We tried shopping around a couple prototypes. Problem is, there's no iteration on it. So when we went to these publishers and they said, "Yeah, come back to us later," we couldn't go back to them later because there was no progress made.
Exactly.
And it's too hard, because now the thing is, if you're not putting your blood, sweat, and tears into making sure that game gets to market, or that game is iterated on or creates progress, we can't sell it. Especially if everyone passes the first time. If everyone passes the first time and they have really good reasons for it, and you're not working on it, now our job's done, or it's over, unless we keep trying to find new people for it. But if you have 40, 50 people saying the same thing, and you're not going to make the progress on it, you're going to most likely get the same feedback. Now, you could be of the mindset that, there's one person out there that will say yes, but do you really want to spend the next 2-3 years finding that one person, or do you want to put it towards, now it's opportunity costs? Or do you want to work on the other projects, your work for hire that's doing well, or your other project that's doing well, or your other projects that are in the market that are doing well? Do you want to just put the resources into the live ops or the games as a service, the roadmap for those games? Is it better to put your time and effort behind those games? So I just think, it's just really hard to sell that, and it's not sexy, it's not fun. And, I love seeing progress on my clients' games. Pontus and I actually have a shared client. And his game, heck does he take feedback, and heck does he ever create amazing progress on that game. And the more and more he does this, the more and more I get excited. And I think we're getting really close to something with him, to signing a deal with him. With someone. He's going to partner with somebody, whether it's now or before the game ships. I guarantee 100%. That. 100%. And it's just the fact that he's made a lot of progress. He's a very smart individual. He's made a lot of progress, and he keeps taking feedback, and he agrees with feedback, and he incorporates feedback. Now, I'm not saying you should always incorporate feedback. Sometimes publishers want the game to change so drastically it's no longer the developer's game, it's the publisher's game.
Yep.
In that case, you don't want to do it, because now you might be you're not working on your own product anymore. Now you're working on someone else's product, even though you came up with the idea. And you might not be happy. Most likely you're not going to be happy with that, because now it's a totally different game. If you're happy with that and you want to do it, go ahead. But
I think too, kind of like, because I think you and I can keep going here, but we should backtrack to the question.
Yeah, let's backtrack. I could go off on a tangent.
And definitely will be a fun topic to discuss, I think, as well individually in another chat. But to go back to the question at hand on the raising money for indies, I'm 100% in agreement with Colin. Don't even bother trying to raise it on a paper pitch. It's just not going to work, because you guys don't have backgrounds. You don't know what you're doing. And so many times I've been pitched paper pitches, or even with a very early MVP, and the numbers just don't make any sense. The thing is, math never lies. Math is literal science. When you put in all the numbers in your spreadsheets, it always adds up, or it doesn't. That's just how math works. So when you come to me with a budget of 1.2 million with all these features, any good producer and the publishers will be like, this is all bullshit. I mean, this doesn't make sense. So that brings me, that will have to be a separate one as well, I think. But I was gonna say, that brings me back to how much how much money do you ask for? I think we're gonna have to dig that into another one. So yeah, asking for money is a whole other conversation. So again, indies, guys, you listen to us. Don't even try with a paper pitch, okay? So Colin, then what if you're let's call it a mid-tier developer, you got a couple ship titles, maybe not, Assassin's Creed, but still decent success. Can you still do a paper pitch, or do you still recommend doing a prototype yourself?
No, I still recommend reinvesting your capital into your game, because what's going to happen is, even if you're a AA developer, you might be able to get some better terms, but if someone else is funding the entire game, the terms are going to be in their favor. Usually the person that's providing the money, the terms are in their favor, because they're usually it's perceived perceive the fact that who has the money is the one who's in control. So if someone else is providing all the money, the terms are, at least in the beginning, the proposed are not going to be in your favor.
A great example here actually is, and this is what I want to do a whole different side topic on, but just to make it short, exactly what you said. The thing is that if you somehow raise the prototype money from friends and family, and you build this first game, and let's say that you actually fund half of it, your terms are going to be extremely good with the publisher when you negotiate.
Yep.
You're going to get more rev share into your company so that the next game, you can actually fund it so far that you're going to have very good terms. But even if you succeed in making a paper pitch to a publisher, you're going to have such a small rev share that even if the game succeeds, remember, the publisher, guys, has to recoup all the money. Then you get your rev share, whatever you actually negotiate. And yes, sometimes if you're good enough in negotiating and it makes sense, you might get a rev share right away. But if you're asking for a lot of money, usually in the 7 digits, the publisher likes to recoup most of it first. The point here is still that you need to be a massive success to get enough cash to actually build your next game. But if you build if you fund the first prototype of your first game, half of it yourself, you might get enough money to build the next one right away. And that is an extremely important thing for the long term of your company. Because remember, a lot of developers forget, games are business. This game is your company, your business. To build your business, you need money. If you do a paper pitch and you're in an 80-20, for example, in the publisher's favor, you're probably not going to have enough money to build the next one. And I think that's a key element in when you decide to not raise or raise the money, you need to have funded some of it yourself. And by the way, soft funding is okay. Not with every publisher, but with a lot of publishers, soft funding is okay. And a lot of governments, like the German one, has matching grants, where if you do a production of, let's say, 1 million euros, you can get half of it or 30% from the government, and then that's your investment into the project towards the publisher. So that's probably another story. So, is there anything you want to add to that, Colin?
Well, first, I'll do a little promoting for you and I, Pontus. But the great thing about getting in contact with Pontus or with Lunar Owl Consulting is the fact that we know all these options. We have avenues into these options. We will get you in front of these programs or these individuals that can provide this. And there's actually a lot of funding sources out there. There's a lot.
Yep.
And depending on where you are in the world, that changes a bit. But I will say, globally, most of these publishers will partner with studios anywhere in the world. So we have those connections. We have those avenues. We can open them up to you. At the same time, there are different funding sources that might be a little more geographic when it comes to government funding and other, geographic specific funding, where if you're in the country, they'll do the funding. But we have those sources too. So we can help you guys, put you in front of those sources and let you know what those sources are funding, and then help package you to look good in front of those sources. So just going to throw that out there. That's one of the big advantages of partnering with GTR or Lunar Owl Consulting.
Again, I think we're going to have a whole conversation on business advisors because I think it's so important that you guys understand it doesn't have to be Colin or Pontus. Anybody. Do not, especially if you don't have co-founders. And the reason, and that might be another topic as well, on co-founders is that you need someone to have a ball plank against, throw ideas against. Because if you're the sole CEO and the sole founder, the company won't be as good as having someone that's good at something that you're not good at. It's always good to have someone in the other, section, in the other ball court against you to juggle things and to understand each other better. But again, we're going to go off rails here. So
yeah, I'm just going to say one thing, and this will be a different topic. If you're looking for VC funding or outside investment, they're going to want to see more than one founder, because what happens if you get hit by a bus, and that's all I will leave it at.
Yep.
And that can be from a separate video, separate topic.
Yep. So final thing on this one, what if you're AAA then? And I guess there are two portions to this. There are people, the guys that just left Blizzard, I don't remember their names, but they founded a new studio that are making RTS games, which is awesome, my favorite.
Frost Giant Games?
Yes, exactly. Okay. Very happy for whatever they're going to make. And obviously, that's a different case, guys. They're on the business side and know how to run a company, and they left and they now made this awesome company and raised a lot of money. But so I think we don't need to dig into that, because if you come from the business side in AAA, I think you know what to do. So instead, let's talk about what if you're a AAA employee, let's say a programmer or a producer, and you're going to start your new company. then what do you recommend they do, Colin?
I don't think my answer changes. Look,
That's
at that
okay.
point, I think at that point you have money to invest. You should, unless you have a luxurious lifestyle and you just love to live at that edge. You probably have some money to put into the studio and the game. And my suggestion is you put as much money as you possibly can to get to the best possible prototype or playable or vertical slice you can. And then you go and you talk to these publishers about, getting fit. It might even be finishing funds at that point. In that case, if it's finishing funds, you probably can capture most of the back end. The more money you put in, the closer you are to finishing, the better the back end terms you can possibly get. So you could have like a 60-40 rev share, 70-30 rev share. 70-30 rev share is mostly when you have a finished product and the publisher is going to do more marketing distribution. You could even get 80-20 in that case if you have a finished product and it's, it captures a very active market, active viable marketplace. It's a great genre. You could point to a lot of comparables that have done really well in that space. You have a talented team. The thing is, if you're a talented individual and you're starting your own studio, you probably have friends that will come join you that are of the AAA caliber too, that are going to come join you. And you could probably attract more because you can say, hey, look, I've done this, this, and that. I'm developing this new idea. And if you're an enthusiastic person, you could probably attract, and you're very good at showmanship, you could probably attract a pretty good AAA team. And then if you can put the money in, now you're going to the marketplace. You probably have hopefully a very good prototype to show because you understand the dynamics and the economics, logistics of everything. In that case, then I would go and I'd find the right partner for your game, and hopefully it's finishing funds, or if it's more 50% done, or it's the prototype, you could probably still negotiate yourself into a pretty good spot. But I would say put your money in first. Get your friend, get not just your friends. Get the right people for the project. Because I think this is another topic. Don't just get your friends. Make sure the people that you're hiring actually are in the right seats on the bus that can actually deliver on the plan for this game and the vision for this game. If you just hire your friends, you might have problems with execution.
And I actually think you touched on a really cool point, which is, talking earlier when you mentioned about if you are a senior in one of these companies and you're going to create your own, the fact of the matter is you probably have savings. Now, you might not have enough savings to hire an entire team. And then what you can do here is, so let's say that you and your co-founder, hopefully, because you should find somebody, you start this new studio, and then when you're looking for team members, you can have them part-time, You might the thing is, you don't actually have to pay them either. We talked about sweat equity. We talked about getting incentives. So let's say you don't have tons of savings, but you have enough to, cover yourself, and let's say your co-founder has enough to cover himself or herself for 2 years. 2 years is a long time to build a prototype or a vertical slice, and you can find a team members from your previous companies or from other companies that, believe in you and your vision. You can have them part-time with incentives, maybe hopefully pay them a bit of cash, of course, but stretch yourself as long as you can until you have a product that you can present. And that is another way to do it, because you might not have $500,000 in your bank, but you might have, let's say, $60,000. And if you live very leanly in certain countries, that can last you 2-3 years, and maybe even send some off to other people. You might, if you have a family, of course, the number might change. The point is that there is definitely enough for you to kind of build something. Building something is better than having nothing at all, which is why I'm in complete agreement with Colin saying I would always build something before pitching it, period. Which is actually why Global Top Round, we work exclusively with teams that have something. Why? Because, we work fast. We want to create deals. We want to get you the best possible future. And if you don't have anything yet, like Colin said, I'm not going to believe in your product if you didn't put any of your own money in or enough of your sweat equity. Why would I? You were asking me to put my money into your project, and you haven't put a single dollar in yourself. How does that really sound like, right?
Yeah, I think another thing to add there is that, GTR and just like these other publishers, they're seeing lots and lots of projects.
Yeah.
And most of these projects are playable demos and people who have put their own money in the project. So you have to understand that the standard or the norm is the fact that Pontus sees a bunch of games that have money put into them, and now you're pitching him something where you didn't put any money in or any blood, sweat, and equity, why should he go with that project if he has, again, it's risk mitigation. It's always risk mitigation. If someone has an idea on a paper, you have no idea if what's on paper is going to match up to the playable, right? You don't even know if the prototype or the playable demo that the people have presented is going to end up being the vision you have in the materials. Yeah. However, there's a much better chance that the playable, if it does line up, or it does look like it's what's in the pitch deck, there's a much better chance that can actually turn into the final vision and that you can execute on it. They have no idea especially if you're a new indie team, they have no idea about execution. It is a gamble if you're going to be able to execute on this piece of paper you've put in front of them. And just the reality is they see so many playable demos, they're going to go with somebody with a playable demo because it's just risk mitigation 101.
Exactly. And actually, guys, I think we've already been talking for 1 hour and 12 minutes here. So I think instead of continuing here, I think this was actually a very educational session on how to build a prototype and the initial starts of your company, and what you kind of need to think about and the different types of labels. That I think we can cut it here and make this our first episode talking basically about the initial starting of a company, what the labels are, how you raise money for your prototype, and next time we can make a much larger episode on publishers. Because, today we also wanted to talk about self-publishing versus publishing, but publishers generally is a huge topic. Because right now, if you go to a lot of indies out there, they're all like, oh, don't work with publishers. If you Google, publishers and indies, it's so wrong. Because humans have a tendency to speak out when things go bad, but not when they go well. So you don't hear about all the success stories of working with publishers. You don't hear about all the pros. So I think we should make an entire episode on publishers, Colin.
I think so. I 100% agree with you. If something goes sour with a publisher, it's gonna be posted on Reddit. Yep. If something goes really, really well, they're not gonna go to Reddit and post about it. They're just gonna enjoy the relationship and keep moving forward.
Exactly.
Look, I'm actually currently in a position where I think somebody who got a contract went online and did research and found a bunch of bad stuff about publishers. And I think a lot of what he saw has now fueled his decision not to move forward with a publisher.
Yeah.
Even though the reality is his life will change if he signs this agreement, and the sky is the ceiling. It's a AAA publisher. It's a AAA project. It's literally if he does his job right and executes properly, he will have everything in this world. Yet he's gonna walk away because he went on Reddit and saw a bunch of bad posts about publishing arrangements. And the thing is, this publisher has offered a really good deal. He can't see it that way.
I think it comes back to, right, like having that business partner, like having those people. You guys are the business partner here, right? But
he's not listening to us.
No, he's not listening, right? And that's just not how it should be, right? And if he ever had an issue with you guys to begin with, he shouldn't be working with you, right?
I think this is part of the reason why we have a vetting process now, because I think if we went through the vetting process. Now, we were very early on as a studio. Like, we've been working with these guys for a long time. I don't think we had the foresight or the insight to have that process. I think more we were just, we were a new studio. We wanted to work with talented people. We wanted to just help people out. That's really what we want to do. But now that we know a lot of the, just like iterating on your video game to find the right partner, we want to iterate on ourselves and iterate on our own process to make sure that we sign people, they actually want to have a long-term engagement with us. They care about us. You have to remember, if we sign on contingency, the only way we're ever going to get paid is if you say yes, right? If you never say yes, or you're not going to say yes, Howard and I are just working, and this is our livelihood. This is how we pay for everything in our lives. So if you don't say yes, and we put all that work in, you say no to everything we put in front of you, we're never going to get paid. And the thing is, it's not like we're just going to get you bad deals or put things on the table you can't say yes to. The reality is we get to know you. We know what you're looking for. We work to put things in front of you that you can say yes to. And if we have challenges along the way, we'll try and get it to a place where you can say yes. But if at the end of the day, you signed into an agreement with us to say yes to an investment or to a partner, and we thought you were excited about getting a partner because to take you to the next level, right? The whole point of a partnership is to take you to the next level. And if we put something in front of you and you can't say yes to it, you don't want to say yes to it, you're no longer faithful to what to the agreement we signed with you. And at that point, we can't work with you because you don't have our partnership in your best interest. And at that point, we have to walk away. But the reality is we're walking away after 2.5 years of work. So do we want to do that again? No, we don't want to do that again. If we want to work this person again, they'd have to pay us they'd have to pay us up front for us to want to engage with them again. Because if not, we can't trust that they have our best interest at heart. They have their own best interest at heart. Or if they're going to change their mind, because the reality is you changed your mind. You no longer want this partnership or this deal we put on the table. So
I think, coming in the future, guys, for anybody watching, if you have any topics you want us to talk about, please, add it in the comments or, send us a DM or an email. So it's Pontus@globaltopround.com and Colin.
Yeah. You guys can email me at COLIND@lunaraowl.com. You can go to the website and you can actually sign up for a 30-minute session with me if you'd like, just to get to know us. It's just go to the contact page within lunaraowl.com. And if you go on LinkedIn, I'm pretty sure you can find my phone number. Heck, I'm pretty open. You can give me a call. You can text me. I'll respond to you.
At the end of this stream, we're going to have like a little picture that shows both of our contacts, so if you guys want to reach out to either of us, do so. And again, if you want to give us topics to talk about, do so. Otherwise, I think the two things, just Colin and I, as you guys can probably tell, we tend to talk a lot, so there's a lot of information here. And of course, we want to tailor it towards the audience. So I personally think, we have two really cool ones upcoming. The first one is just speaking about publishers in general. And the second one, I think, is the importance of business partners. And you guys need to understand this is not self-promotion. It can be anybody. It doesn't have to be us. It doesn't have to be, your aunt or someone you trust. It's better yet, it should be someone that doesn't know you. That's the best kind of business partner. Someone like us who don't know us, know you initially, that get to know you, get to understand you from the beginning, or a random expert or advisor, same thing there. Because when you work with friends and family and you get your uncle who knows business or whatever, or your cousin, they are biased. They're your family. And I see a lot of companies in the indie game industry that has advisors that might not necessarily be the perfect ones for your company. So we'll dig into that as well. But again, any other topics you have, please let us know. So any final words, Colin, before we wrap this up?
No, this was fun. This was very exciting. It was fun. This is the great thing about these kinds of things. Your mind just starts. The ideas come up. You get motivated. Your brain goes on fire, and then you want to be taken all these different directions. And now I'm thinking, me and you could sit here for 48 hours and just go through so many different topics. I think even a couple, we do a lot of talking, but I think there's even topics that we haven't discussed yet that we could dive into that I think are totally worth our time to get into off podcast. So I'm excited about this. I think this is great. I can't wait to keep doing this, and this fires me up. So I'm happy to be here. I'm really happy we're doing this, and I really hope we're able to give a lot of people here insight and help them move their companies forward, even if it's not us or if it's not even other people doing what we're kind of doing. I hope a lot of the advice here helps you guys out and helps move you forward. It gets you fired up to help your company and your project out. And ultimately, if you never reach out to anyone on the business side, I hope you get a deal just from listening to this podcast eventually.
I think that's our ultimate goal, guys. I mean, the reason we're unfiltered and unstructured is exactly intentional. We want you guys to see the full people that we are, and also we want to keep it very open. So if you're watching and you want us to speak about something in particular that might bring your business to the next level, I think that's what's important. We don't want to sit here in suits and talk about how cool we are as companies. We want to help educate you guys, because if the industry grows, it indirectly helps us. Even if it's not our deals, even if it's not our companies, the entire industry growing helps all of us in the industry, you included, the publishers included, the investors, and us people as business developers. So with that said, Thank you, everybody, for watching. This was the first episode of Fireside Chat with Pontus Mahler and Colin Donaldson. And next up, we'll talk about publishers. So thank you guys, everyone. See you in the next one.
Thanks, guys.